One single mother accidentally called her boss, asking for help with her baby in her arms, and the CEO said, "Don't worry, I will save my son." A love secret was revealed, and their lives changed forever. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you are watching from. Emily's broken alarm clock didn't ring that March 15th, but the desperate cries of Liam woke her up before the sun rose over the grey buildings of the East Side. At 24, she already carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, a weight that multiplied exponentially since she held her 6-month-old son in her arms, alone in the small 2-room apartment she shared with her distant cousin's mother-in-law. Liam's skin was burning. 40 degrees on the digital thermometer she had bought on a payment plan. His little hands trembled as his small body burned with fever, and his brown eyes, so similar to hers, could barely stay open. "My God, my son, what do I do?" Emily murmured, pacing desperately around the cramped apartment. The old refrigerator hummed in the corner, trying to keep fresh the few ingredients left from last week's grocery run. On the small kitchen table, bills piled up. Electricity, water, pharmacy, crib payment. Each paper represented an impossible choice. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the used phone she had bought the previous year. She needed to call an ambulance, but she knew she couldn't afford it. Medicaid at the nearest hospital was on strike, and the corporate insurance she had dreamed of having one day seemed farther away than the moon. With Liam burning in her arms, Emily quickly dialed the number she found on Google, or at least she thought she had dialed. Her fingers shook so much that she could barely see the numbers on the cracked screen of her phone. "Hello?" The male voice on the other end sounded firm, controlled, a voice that commanded meetings in air-conditioned rooms and made decisions that moved millions. "Please, I need help." Emily's voice came out choked with desperation. "My son has a very high fever. He's only 6 months old, and I don't have money for a private hospital. Please, help me." On the other end of the line, on the 47th floor of the most imposing building on Fifth Avenue, Raphael Smith stopped reviewing quarterly reports. At 42, he led one of the largest business groups in the country, but at that moment, hearing that desperate voice he would recognize anywhere in the world, he felt his heart race like a teenager. "Emily?" The name slipped from his lips before he could control himself. How do you know my name?" Her voice became even more confused, panic rising. Raphael closed his eyes. For 8 months since he found out about Liam, he had been waiting for this moment, an opportunity to be present, to help, to take responsibility that was rightfully his. All those months watching her from afar, seeing her carry the weight of being a single mother alone, working as a cleaner in the building where he ran his business empire. "Don't worry," he said, rising from his Italian leather chair and walking to the panoramic window that showed New York waking up below. "I will save my son." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Raphael could hear Emily's heavy breathing. He could almost feel her confusion and shock taking over. Your son." Her voice was an incredulous whisper. "Liam," Raphael said softly, resting his forehead against the cold window. "He was born on September 15th last year at 3:47 a.m. at St. Mary's Hospital. He weighed 7.5 pounds and measured 19 inches. Emily almost dropped the phone. How did he know all these details? How did he know her son's name? And how did he know that— "You are—" she started, but her voice faltered. "Raphael Smith," he simply said, "and you need to take Liam to the hospital now. I'm already sending a private ambulance to your address." "I didn't give you my address," Emily said, her voice becoming tenser. "How do you know where I live?" Raphael took a deep breath. "Because I know everything about you, Emily. I know you wake up at 5 in the morning every day to get here by 6. I know you always leave a little bit of your lunchbox for Mrs. Johnson, the lady who cleans the women's restroom on the 23rd floor. I know you sing softly while mopping the floor, and that you always stop to look at the city view when you're cleaning my office." "Your office?" Emily sat heavily on the bed she shared with Liam. The weight of the revelation was crashing down on her like an avalanche. You are the owner of the company. I'm your boss, Emily, and I am Liam's father." The baby's cries intensified at that moment, as if he could sense his mother's emotional tension. Emily rocked him automatically, but her eyes were fixed on nothing, trying to process information that seemed impossible. "This can't be happening," she murmured. "This is a dream, a nightmare." "The ambulance will be there in 10 minutes, Raphael said, his voice gentle but determined. "Dr. James Smith, pediatrician at Syro-Libanese Hospital, is already waiting for you. He is the best in the city." "I can't pay," Emily said automatically, the pragmatism of poverty speaking louder than confusion. "I don't have insurance. I don't have money." "You won't pay anything," Raphael replied. "Liam is my son, and I will take care of him. And you." "How can you be sure that—" Emily began, but was interrupted. "Summer festival in Brooklyn, June 23rd of the year before last," Raphael said softly. "You were wearing a blue floral dress and had a yellow ribbon in your hair. You laughed when I said my name. Ethan Parker was the one I worked in maintenance. We danced the square dance 3 times, and then you disappeared," Emily finished, her voice barely a whisper. "The next day, you were gone. I searched for you everywhere." "I had to travel for work," Ethan lied. The truth was, he had panicked. A billionaire CEO falling head over heels for a 22-year-old girl he met at a neighborhood party while in disguise. It felt like a soap opera script, not real life. "And you... How long have you known about Liam?" "Since the beginning," Ethan admitted. "I hired a private investigator after I saw you working here. When I found out you were pregnant." "You hired me because of that?" Emily's voice turned hard, hurt. "No," Ethan replied quickly. "You were hired because Mrs. Johnson, the cleaning supervisor, needed staff. I just asked her to give you a chance when I learned you were looking for work." The sound of an ambulance siren began to approach. Emily stood up, holding Liam tighter, feeling the ground shift beneath her feet. "Why did you never say anything?" she asked, tears finally streaming down her face. "Why did you watch me from afar as if I were an animal in a zoo?" "Because you're too strong to accept help from someone you consider unreachable," Ethan said, and there was a deep sadness in his voice. "And because I knew that when the time came, when you really needed me, you would call me, even if it was by mistake." The knock on the door echoed through the small apartment. The paramedics had arrived. "Emily," Ethan said softly, "trust me. For Liam. We can talk about everything else later, but right now he needs medical attention." She looked at her son in her arms, at his closed little eyes and labored breathing, and made the hardest decision of her life, to trust the man who had broken her heart and who now claimed to be the father of her child. "Okay," she whispered, "for Liam." St. Mary's Hospital at 7 in the morning on a Thursday was a parallel universe to what Emily knew. Shiny white corridors that smelled of expensive disinfectant, staff wearing immaculate uniforms, and a respectful silence that contrasted sharply with the chaos of the public emergency room she was used to. Liam slept in her arms after receiving initial care. The IV in his tiny vein made Emily's heart tighten, but the relief of seeing his fever drop was greater than any discomfort. Dr. James Smith, a man in his early 50s with graying hair and discreet glasses, had examined Liam with a patience and attention she had never seen before. "It's just a common viral infection," the doctor explained, jotting something down on his digital clipboard. "But we did thorough tests to be sure. The baby is healthy and strong. With the right treatment, he will be perfect in 2 days. 2 hours later, Emily was still processing the reality when she heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. Her stomach tightened. During all those months cleaning the 47th floor, she had memorized the sound of Ethan's footsteps, firm, decisive, the rhythm of someone who always knew exactly where he was going. He appeared at the door of the private room where Liam was resting. Emily had seen him hundreds of times through the glass of the conference room or passing through the hallways, always impeccable in his tailored suit, always with that aura of power that made other wealthy men seem like child's play. But now, seeing him in that vulnerable moment, she noticed details she had never seen before. Ethan Parker was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that perfectly filled the navy suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. Dark brown hair with a few silver strands at the temples that gave him a distinguished look at 42. But it was his eyes that took her breath away, brown like Liam's, with the same intense expression her son already displayed even at such a young age. "How is he?" Ethan asked, moving closer to the chair where Emily held Liam. His voice was different, softer, almost hesitant. "Better," Emily replied, instinctively pulling Liam away when Ethan approached. "The doctor said it's viral. It will pass in a few days." Ethan stopped where he was, respecting her space, but Emily could see the pain in his eyes at being rejected. For a moment, the powerful CEO disappeared, and she saw only a man who wanted to get close to his own son. "Emily," he said softly, sitting in the chair next to the armchair, but keeping a respectful distance. "I know you have questions." "Questions?" Emily laughed bitterly. "I have 1,000,000 questions. How did you know Liam was your son? Why did you never say anything? Why did you let me go through this alone all these months?" Ethan took a deep breath, running his hands through his hair, in a gesture Emily recognized. She had seen him do it through the glass of the conference room when he was stressed. "After the summer festival," he began, "I couldn't get you out of my head. You were different from all the women I had ever met. Genuine, funny, unpretentious. When you showed up working at my company 3 months later, I almost lost it. You could have talked to me," Emily said, her voice heavy with hurt. "I searched for you, Ethan. I looked for Ethan Parker in every maintenance company in the city." "I know," he admitted, looking at his hands. "Mrs. Johnson, my secretary, told me. She knew you were looking for me because you asked her if she knew someone by that name." Emily's eyes widened. "Mrs. Johnson knew. Since when?" "Since the beginning," Ethan confessed. "She raised me, Emily. She knows every expression on my face. On the first day you showed up at the office to work, she saw you. Looking through the glass, I knew immediately that something was wrong. And she didn't say anything." Emily was incredulous. "She made me an offer," Liam said, a faint smile appearing on his face. "She said that if I didn't have the courage to tell the truth, I should at least make sure you were okay. It was her idea to keep me informed about your situation without you knowing." "Informed how?" Emily's voice was getting louder, and Miguel shifted slightly in her arms. "The private investigator," Liam admitted, looking embarrassed. "I know it seems like an invasion of privacy, but I needed to know. If you were okay. When I found out you were pregnant, Emily, I did the math. The dates matched perfectly. And why didn't you come talk to me then?" Tears began to stream down her face. "Do you know how hard it was? Working pregnant, alone, not knowing if I could afford prenatal care. Do you know how many nights I spent awake wondering how I would raise a child alone?" Liam leaned forward, the desire to comfort her clear in his eyes. "Because I was terrified," he confessed. "Terrified that you would think I was trying to buy you, or that I was only interested because you were pregnant. You're so independent, so proud. I knew that if I approached you offering financial help, you would kick me out of your life forever. So you preferred to let me suffer alone." I never let you suffer alone, Liam said softly. Emily, why do you think there was always a hot cup of coffee on the table when you arrived for work? Why do you think your schedule was always the most flexible on the team? Why do you think when Miguel was born, you automatically received paid maternity leave even though you were a contractor? Emily stopped crying, processing the information. That was all you. And more, he admitted. The crib you found on sale at the department store, I paid the difference. The pediatrician who agreed to see Miguel through Medicaid, I cover his fees. The pharmacy in your neighborhood that always has the medications you need in stock, I have an arrangement with them. Oh my God, Emily whispered, feeling both grateful and outraged. You've been controlling my whole life without me knowing. I've been taking care of you, Liam gently corrected. In the only way I thought you would accept. Miguel stirred in Emily's arms and opened his little eyes, looking directly at Liam. For a moment, father and son stared at each other in silence, and Emily could swear there was recognition in the baby's gaze. He has your eyes, she said softly, almost unconsciously. And your nose, Liam replied, a genuine smile lighting up his face for the first time since he arrived. And your stubbornness from what I've observed. Despite everything, Emily found herself smiling. You've been watching a lot. Every day, Liam admitted. When you stop to look at the city view from my office window, when you sing softly, thinking no one is listening, when you share your food with Mrs. Johnson, even knowing there's barely enough for you. You see me doing all that? Emily felt exposed, vulnerable. I see because I can't stop looking, Liam confessed, his voice dropping lower. Since that night at the summer festival, when you laughed at those bad jokes I told about the rain, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken emotions and 8 months of repressed feelings. Miguel yawned, a small and perfect sound that broke the tension. He's hungry, Emily said automatically, searching her bag for the bottle. Let me help, Liam offered, extending his hands. Emily hesitated for a moment, looking at his large, careful hands, and then, surprising herself, handed Miguel to his father. Liam took the child with a gentleness that contrasted with his physical stature, as if he were holding the most precious treasure in the world. Miguel nestled naturally against his father's chest, and Emily felt something break and rebuild simultaneously in her heart. Hi, my son, Liam whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I can finally get to know you for real. Seeing the two together, her son in the arms of the man who had broken and yet protected her heart, Emily knew that regardless of all the complications and hurts, their lives had just changed forever. 3 days after the incident at the hospital, Emily was back at work, but everything had changed. Every corridor of the corporate building on Fifth Avenue now carried a different weight. She was no longer just the invisible cleaner who tidied the upper floors. She was the mother of the CEO's child, although only 2 people in the building knew this, herself and Mrs. Johnson, Liam's personal secretary. It was 5:30 in the morning when Emily arrived at work, an hour before the official start time. She needed that extra time to organize her thoughts and prepare for the possibility of seeing Liam in the hallways. Miguel was with the neighbor, Mrs. Carmine, a retired lady who took care of some children in the building and had agreed to watch the baby for a price Emily could afford. "Good morning, dear," the familiar voice of Mrs. Johnson echoed down the corridor on the 47th floor as Emily was mopping the floor. Emily looked up and saw the secretary approaching with 2 cups of coffee. Helena Johnson, at 60 years old, was an elegant woman who had dedicated the last 35 years of her life to work. Her grey hair was always impeccably styled in a low bun, wearing discreet but well-tailored suits, and her posture commanded respect without ever needing to raise her voice. "Mrs. Johnson," Emily greeted, trying to sound natural. "You arrived early today. Can I talk to you for a minute?" Helena asked, offering one of the cups to Emily. "Freshly brewed coffee, just the way I know you like it." Emily hesitated. Accepting the coffee would mean admitting to the intimacy that now existed between them, but refusing would be rude. She set down the cleaning cloth and accepted the cup, feeling the comforting aroma rise to her. "Mrs. Smith, I don't know what Ethan told you about." "Child, I've known that boy since he was 12, Mrs. Smith gently interrupted, guiding Emily to a small, empty conference room. "I know when he's in love, and I know when he's hurting. For the past 8 months he's been both." They sat in cushioned chairs around a polished mahogany table. Emily felt out of place there, in her simple uniform with her hands still rough from cleaning, but Mrs. Smith treated her as if she were the most important person in the world. "He told me about the summer festival," Mrs. Smith continued, taking a sip of her coffee, "and how he fell in love with you that night." "If he was in love, why did he disappear?" Emily asked, the hurt still evident in her voice. Mrs. Smith sighed deeply. "Because he's a proud idiot who didn't know how to reconcile his world with the feelings he was having, but also because he was protecting you." "Protecting how?" "Emily, do you have any idea what kind of life Ethan leads? The pressures he faces?" Mrs. Smith leaned forward. "He's single, a billionaire, and considered one of the most influential men in the country. If he had acknowledged a relationship with you back then, you would have been tabloid fodder the next day." Emily hadn't thought of that. "But now it's different. Now there's Liam, and Ethan has learned that there are more important things than public opinion." Mrs. Smith smiled. "But you need to understand that it won't be easy. There are already people talking about the special situation of the employee on the 47th floor. "What kind of comments?" Emily felt a chill in her stomach. "Nothing too direct yet, but Ms. Johnson, the cleaning supervisor, has been making some insinuations. She's telling other staff that you receive preferential treatment and questioning why." Ms. Johnson. Emily knew the woman well. 45 years old, a supervisor for 10 years, always in high heels even for work, with an ambition that was visible from afar. She had been the one to hire Emily, but had always had a cold and calculating attitude. "What exactly is she saying?" Emily asked. "That you always have the best shifts, that you're never reprimanded when you arrive a few minutes late, and that suddenly your son had access to the best hospital in the city." Mrs. Smith paused. "Ms. Johnson isn't stupid, Emily. She's putting the pieces together." "And what does that mean for me?" "It means you need to be prepared. Ms. Johnson is envious of her position and will do anything to protect it. If she finds out about Ethan and Liam, she will use that information." Emily stood up abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the waking city. Down below, New York City buzzed with morning traffic. Millions of people chasing their dreams, each carrying their own dramas and hopes. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said, resting her forehead against the cold glass. "I just wanted to work in peace and raise my son." "And you can continue doing that," Mrs. Smith approached. "But now you have choices you didn't have before." "What kind of choices?" Mrs. Smith hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "Ethan is preparing a proposal for you, a proposal that would change your life completely." "What kind of proposal?" Emily turned, facing the older woman. "He wants to offer you a job in the administrative department, starting as an assistant with a salary 5 times higher than your current one, full medical benefits, and childcare assistance for Liam." Emily felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. "He wants to buy me." "He wants to give you opportunities that you deserve," Mrs. Smith corrected. "Emily, I've seen you organizing the documents that fall from the tables during cleaning. You have the intelligence for much more than just mopping the floor." but I've never studied administration. I've never worked in an office. And who said that matters? I started as a receptionist 35 years ago. Ethan gave me opportunities to grow because he saw my potential. Mrs. Smith gently touched Emily's arm. He sees the same potential in you. Or he's trying to keep me close because of Liam, Emily retorted bitterly. Maybe a bit of both, Mrs. Smith admitted honestly, but is that necessarily a bad thing? Before Emily could respond, they heard footsteps in the hallway. Ethan was arriving for another day at work, and Emily could hear his voice talking on the phone about mergers and acquisitions. Language from a world she didn't understand. "He's coming," Mrs. Smith whispered. "Do you want to talk to him now?" "No," Emily said quickly, grabbing her cleaning supplies. "I need to think. I need to process all of this." "Emily!" Mrs. Smith called as she was leaving the room. "I know it's scary, but Ethan is a good man, and Liam deserves to have his father in his life." "I know," Emily replied softly. "That's what scares me." She left the room just as Ethan turned the corner of the hallway. For a moment, they locked eyes. He impeccably dressed in his dark grey suit. She in her blue cleaning uniform with her hands still holding the duster. "Good morning, Emily," he said softly, stopping where he was. "Good morning, Mr. Parker," she replied formally, and she could see the pain in his eyes at hearing the distant treatment. "How is Liam?" Ethan asked, and there was genuine anxiety in his voice. "Well," Emily replied, "completely recovered." "I'm glad to hear that," Ethan hesitated. "Emily, I would like to talk to you when you have time." "I'm working, sir." "I know, but maybe after your shift I need to pick up Liam from the neighbor's house." "After work," Emily interrupted, "and feed him dinner, give him a bath, and put him to bed. I don't have time for conversations." Ethan nodded, understanding, but clearly frustrated. "Sure, maybe another day." Emily nodded and continued walking, but she could feel his eyes following her down the hallway. When she reached the elevator and the doors closed, she finally allowed the tears to fall. Downstairs, in the lobby of the building, she found Mrs. Johnson waiting for the elevator, impeccable as always in her high heels and red lipstick. "Emily," Mrs. Johnson smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Good to see you. I heard your son was sick." "Yes, but he's fine now." "Which hospital did you go to?" "Just out of curiosity, of course. It's always good to know where there's good pediatric care in the public system." Emily hesitated. "Public hospital, actually, through Medicaid." "Oh," Mrs. Johnson said, and there was something calculating in her eyes. "How lucky. You were to get such quick care. Medicaid has been so overloaded lately." The elevator doors opened, and Mrs. Johnson stepped in, but before the doors closed, she turned to Emily. "I hope you know how lucky you are to work here, Emily. Not all employees have the opportunities you have." The doors closed, leaving Emily alone in the lobby, with the certainty that bigger problems were coming. The month of April brought with it the first autumn rains and a growing tension that Emily could feel in the air on the 47th floor. 3 weeks had passed since the conversation with Mrs. Smith, and life had taken on a strange routine where she and Ethan existed in the same space, carefully avoiding each other, but always aware of each other's presence. Liam was growing quickly. At 7 months, he was already trying to sit up on his own and smiled every time he saw Emily come home from work. Mrs. Johnson, the neighbor who took care of him, always commented on how smart and cheerful he was. But Emily noticed something the neighbor didn't see. Liam always looked at the door when he heard male footsteps in the hallway, as if he were waiting for someone. That Thursday morning, Emily was cleaning the executive bathroom on the 45th floor when she heard her name being called. Emily Johnson was standing at the door with an expression that couldn't completely disguise her malice. "Emily, I need to talk to you." Emily entered the bathroom, closing the door behind her. She was wearing a beige outfit that probably cost more than Emily's monthly salary, and the expensive perfume created a cloud around her. "Yes, ma'am?" Emily continued cleaning the mirror, trying to look busy. "I've received some comments about your work lately." Emily positioned herself where she could see Emily's reflection in the mirror. "Employees have mentioned that you've been distracted." "Distracted?" Emily stopped cleaning. "My work is up to date, ma'am. I've never received any complaints." "No, you haven't," Emily agreed, but there was something sharp in her voice. "In fact, it's exactly the opposite. It seems you've been receiving special consideration." Emily turned to face her supervisor. "I don't understand what you mean." "Well," Emily slowly walked around the bathroom, running her finger along the counters that Emily had just cleaned, as if searching for flaws. "For example, last week you were 20 minutes late because your son was crying, and I didn't do anything. Last month you asked to leave early for a doctor's appointment, and I allowed it. And recently I heard that your son received medical treatment, privately." Emily's heart raced. "My son got sick. Any mother would do the same." "Of course she would," Emily smiled, but it was a predatory smile. "The question is, how does a cleaner afford St. Mary's Hospital?" "I don't, Emily." Emily leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I've worked in this building for 10 years. I know all the secrets, all the dynamics, and I know when someone is receiving special protection." "I don't know what you're talking about." "You don't?" Emily chuckled softly. "Then explain to me why Mr. Ethan Parker asks about you to Mrs. Smith. Why he always finds excuses to come by the floor when you're working. Why your cleaning schedule always includes the 47th floor precisely during the times he's in the office." Emily felt the blood run cold. "Those are coincidences." "Are they?" Emily leaned in closer. "Emily, I wasn't born yesterday, and I have friends in strategic places in this company. Friends who tell me interesting things." "What kind of things?" "Like the fact that on the day your son got sick, Mr. Ethan cancelled 3 important meetings and left the office an hour after you called the emergency room." Emily paused, observing Emily's reaction. "Or how he's been asking HR about maternity leave policies for contracted employees." Emily leaned against the bathroom counter, feeling her legs go weak. "What do you want?" "I want the truth," Emily said, straightening up, "and I want you to understand your position here. You are a contracted employee, Emily, easily replaceable. If I find out that you are taking advantage of the generosity of our CEO in inappropriate ways, I won't hesitate to take action." "And what actions would those be?" "Well," Emily walked to the door, "accidents happen. Employees make mistakes. Sometimes items are found in places they shouldn't be, or confidential documents appear where they don't belong. And when that happens," she shrugged, "terminations for cause are inevitable." The threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Emily understood perfectly. Emily was willing to forge evidence to fire her if necessary. "Why are you doing this?" Emily asked. "I've never done anything to you." "You haven't done anything yet," Emily corrected, "but women like you always want more. They always think they can use beauty and circumstances to get ahead in life, and I won't allow that to happen in my company." "In your company?" I built my position here with hard work and dedication," Emily said, the mask of politeness finally slipping. "I won't let some girl take advantage of situations to get in months what took me years to achieve." Emily opened the door, but before leaving she turned around once more. "A piece of advice, Emily. Stay away from Mr. Ethan, for his sake and yours. Men in his position don't get seriously involved with women like you. They have their fun, then move on to convenient marriages with women of the same social standing. And when that happens, you'll be discarded like a used tissue." The door closed, leaving Emily alone in the gleaming bathroom. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, Red eyes from held-back tears, a simple blue uniform, hands rough from hard work. For a moment she saw what Emily saw. A 24-year-old young woman, a single mother without formal education, trying to survive, in a world that wasn't hers. But then she thought of Liam. His bright little eyes, how he smiled when she came home, how he deserved all the opportunities she never had. And she thought of Ethan, how he had held Liam in the hospital, the tenderness in his eyes when he spoke about his son, the pain she had seen when she treated him coldly. Emily dried her eyes and finished cleaning the bathroom. She had a decision to make, and she knew she couldn't delay it any longer. 3 hours later, she stood before Mrs. Smith's desk on the 47th floor. The secretary looked up from the documents she was organizing and immediately noticed the tension on Emily's face. "Is something wrong?" Mrs. Smith asked, gesturing to the chair in front of her desk. "Emily Johnson knows," Emily said bluntly as she sat down, "or at least she suspects, and she threatened me." Mrs. Smith sighed deeply. "I was expecting this. What kind of threats?" Emily recounted the entire conversation, watching as Mrs. Smith's expression grew increasingly serious. "Can she do those things?" Emily asked at the end. "Forge evidence against me?" "Emily Johnson is ambitious and unscrupulous," Mrs. Smith said carefully. "She has done questionable things in the past to protect her position. I wouldn't doubt she would try something like that. So what do I do? I need this job, Mrs. Smith. It's the only way to support Liam." Mrs. Smith was silent for a moment, clearly weighing her words. "Emily," she finally said, "maybe it's time for you to hear Ethan's proposal." "The job offer you mentioned?" "Not just that." Mrs. Smith leaned forward. "He wants to talk to you about publicly acknowledging Liam as his son, and about your future." Emily felt her heart race. "What does that exactly mean?" "It means he's tired of hiding," Mrs. Smith said softly. "It means he wants to be a real father, not just a silent protector. And it means he's willing to face any social consequence for that to happen." "And me? What happens to me in this story? Do I become the gold-digging mistress who got pregnant by the boss to pull off a scam?" "You become the woman Ethan chose," Mrs. Smith said simply. "And believe me, dear, the opinions of people matter a lot less than you think when you have the heart and support of someone who truly loves you." Emily looked out the panoramic window of the office, seeing the city stretch infinitely below. Millions of people, millions of stories, millions of choices being made at every moment. "If I agree to talk to him," she finally said, "there's no turning back, is there?" "There's no turning back," Mrs. Smith confirmed, "but maybe it's time to stop running from your own destiny." At that moment, they heard Ethan's familiar voice in the hallway, talking on the phone about an afternoon meeting. Emily closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and made the decision that would change her life forever. "Schedule a meeting," she told Mrs. Smith. "It's time for me to hear what he has to say." Ethan Parker's office on the 47th floor was a reflection of the personality of the man who occupied it. Dark mahogany furniture, an imposing desk that could easily seat a family of 8, and a whole wall covered with books that were clearly read, not just decoration. But what impressed Emily the most was the view. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic perspective of New York City, making the city seem like a living organism pulsating below. It was Friday, 5:30 p.m. The building was almost empty, with only cleaning staff and a few workaholic executives still circulating the halls. Emily had asked Mrs. Johnson to stay late with Liam, inventing an excuse about extra work. In truth, she needed courage, and courage was something she had discovered came better when she didn't have an immediate escape route. "Thank you for agreeing to talk with me," Ethan said, gesturing to a brown leather armchair in front of his desk. He had taken off his jacket and loosened his tie, but still looked impeccable in his white button-up shirt. "Mrs. Smith said you had a proposal," Emily said, sitting on the edge of the armchair, as if ready to run at any moment. Ethan walked over to a small side table where there was an espresso machine and prepared 2 cups. The ritual gave him time to organize his thoughts, and Emily took the opportunity to observe him more closely. Without the formality of hallway interactions, she could see details that had previously gone unnoticed. The way he slightly furrowed his brow when he concentrated, how his fingers were long and careful when handling the delicate cup, how there was a small, almost imperceptible scar above his left eyebrow. "Actually, I have several proposals," he said, offering a cup to her before sitting in the armchair beside her. He sat behind the table. The choice was intentional. He wanted to eliminate physical barriers between them. The first is professional. Emily accepted the coffee but didn't drink it. Mrs. Smith mentioned something about an administrative job. "Executive assistant," Liam confirmed. "Starting with a salary of $8,000 a month, full medical benefits for you and Liam, childcare assistance and education. After 6 months, if you adapt, well, we will promote you to Special Projects Coordinator." The numbers danced in Emily's mind. $8,000 was 4 times what she currently earned. With that money, she could move to a better apartment, enroll Liam in a private school, maybe even buy a used car. "And what exactly would I be doing?" she asked, forcing herself to think practically. "Initially, you would support Mrs. Smith with administrative tasks, organizing schedules, preparing documents, coordinating meetings." Liam leaned forward. "But I know you have the potential for much more. In recent months, I've watched you organize documents that fell from the desks during cleaning. You didn't just tidy them up, you organized them chronologically by importance. That shows analytical ability." "That was just basic logic." "Basic logic that many executives with expensive degrees fail to demonstrate," Liam retorted. "Emily, intelligence doesn't just come from university. It comes from observation, adaptability, problem-solving skills. You have that naturally." Emily finally took a sip of the coffee, using the time to process the offer. "And what would be the price of all this generosity?" "There is no price," Liam said firmly. "It's not generosity, it's justice. You are the mother of my child, and I should have taken on that responsibility months ago." "Ah, so now we come to the second proposal," Emily said, and there was a hardness in her voice that hadn't been there before. Liam took a deep breath. "I want to publicly acknowledge my paternity of Liam. I want to register him with my name. I want him to have all the rights that my son should have. And I want to be part of his life daily, not just a distant protector." "And what about me in all this? Do I just become the mother of your heir?" "You become—" Liam hesitated, searching for the right words. "You become the most important woman in my life. Officially." Silence stretched between them. Outside, the city lights began to flicker on, creating a bright mosaic in the growing darkness. "Liam," Emily finally said, using his name for the first time since the hospital, "are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm asking you to give me a chance," he replied carefully. "A chance to prove that what I feel for you is real. A chance for us to build a real family." "Based on what? On a night that happened over a year ago? On months of you secretly observing me as if I were an interesting social experiment?" The criticism hit Liam like a slap. He stood up and walked to the window, resting his hands on the cold glass. "You're right," he admitted, not turning around. "I made mistakes, many mistakes. I should have come back to find you the day after the festival. I should have introduced myself properly when you started working here. I should have taken responsibility when I found out about Liam. So why didn't you?" Emily stood up too, joining him at the window. "Because I was scared," Liam confessed, finally looking at her. Scared that you would reject me, scared that you would think I was trying to buy you, scared that our class difference would be an insurmountable obstacle. And now you're not scared anymore. Now I'm scared of different things, he said. I'm scared of losing you and Liam forever. I'm scared that my son will grow up without really knowing me. I'm scared that you'll find someone who treats you the way you deserve to be treated, and I'll be left alone knowing that I let the best thing that ever happened to me slip away. Emily looked at their reflections in the glass, two silhouettes outlined against the golden light of the office, the city shining like stars at their feet. Do you think it's that simple? She asked. Do you think that just offering money and stability will make me forget 8 months of abandonment? No, Liam said. I think it will be the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but I think it's worth trying. For Liam? For Liam too, but mainly for you. Liam turned to face her completely. Emily, that night at the summer festival, you laughed at my bad jokes about the rain. You danced with me even when I stepped on your foot 3 times. You treated me like I was just a regular guy trying to impress a beautiful girl. No one had ever done that before. And is that what you want? Someone to treat you like a normal person? I want you, Liam said simply. Just the way you are, stubborn, proud, independent, generous, intelligent. I fell in love with you that night, and I haven't been able to stop falling since then. Emily felt, tears burning her eyes. Liam, I know it's a lot to process all at once, he continued, and I know you have every right to send me away and never speak to me again, but I need you to know that I'm not offering these things out of pity or obligation. I'm offering because I want a life with you and with Liam. A real life, not a convenient arrangement. And what if it doesn't work out? Emily asked. What if we find out we're completely different people? What if Liam grows up in the middle of fights and resentments? Then we'll face it together, Liam said, as a family, with honesty, patience, and a lot of love. Emily looked at his hands. Big, careful hands that had held Liam so gently in the hospital. Hands that could give her son all the opportunities she had only dreamed of for him. I need to... Time to think, she finally said. How much time do you need? I don't know. Maybe a week? Maybe a month? Emily stepped away from the window. This isn't just about me, Liam. It's about Miguel too. If I accept this, I'm changing the course of his entire life. For the better, Liam said softly. I hope so. Emily walked to the door but paused before leaving. Liam, is there a third proposal? He smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him in months. There is, but I'll only make it if you accept the other 2 first. And what would that be? Liam walked up to her, stopping close but not touching her. The third proposal is that I spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right decision. Emily looked into his eyes that were exactly like the son they had raised together, and for the first time in months she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, happy endings weren't just fairy tales. A week, she said. Give me a week. I'll give you as much time as you need, Liam replied. But Emily, yes, no matter what your decision is, I'll always be here for Miguel, and for you, if you let me. Emily nodded and left the office, knowing she had just reached a point of no return in her life. The week Emily had asked for to think turned into a whirlwind of conflicting emotions and signs that her life was about to change drastically, whether she wanted it or not. Miguel, now almost 8 months old, seemed to sense his mother's tension. He was sleeping poorly, crying more than usual, and clinging to her with an intensity that broke Emily's heart. It was Tuesday, April 23rd, when the first bombshell dropped. Emily was on the 35th floor, cleaning the financial director's meeting room, when she heard raised voices coming from the hallway. Instinctively, she approached the slightly open door, not to eavesdrop, but because one of the Voices was clearly Emily Johnson's, and the tone suggested trouble. "I can't pretend I don't know what's going on anymore," Emily was saying to someone. "It's unethical and undermines team morale." "And what exactly do you think you know?" The second voice was male, formal, which Emily recognized as belonging to Dr. Henry Walker, the Human Resources Director. "I know that a cleaning staff member is receiving inexplicable special treatment. Flexible hours, justified absences without proper documentation, and access to medical benefits not listed in her employment contract." Emily felt her blood run cold. Emily was formalizing a complaint. "Emily," Dr. Walker said with forced patience, "you're making very serious accusations. Do you have proof of what you're claiming?" "I have witnesses. Other cleaning staff have noticed the irregularities, and I have documentation of hours showing suspicious patterns. There was the sound of papers being shuffled. Additionally, I've conducted some discreet investigations into the hospital where her son was treated recently." Emily's heart began to race so fast that she was sure it could be heard in the hallway. "What kind of investigations?" Dr. Walker asked, and now there was genuine interest in his voice. "St. Mary's Hospital, private care, comprehensive exams, specialist doctor. The total cost of treatment was approximately $15,000. Emily paused dramatically. A staff member who earns $2,000 a month cannot afford that on her own. Maybe she has an insurance plan we don't know about, or relatives who helped, or maybe she has other types of support. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Emily leaned against the wall, feeling her legs turn to jelly. She forced herself to move, quickly putting away her cleaning supplies and exiting the room from the opposite side. 20 minutes later, she was in the bathroom on the 30th floor, trying to control her breathing and decide what to do. Her first reaction was to seek out Mrs. Smith, but she knew that would only confirm Emily's suspicions about improper connections. Her second reaction was more practical. She needed to talk to Liam. Finding an excuse to go up to the 47th floor in the middle of the morning wasn't difficult. She simply swapped with a colleague and took over cleaning that floor. However, when she got there, she discovered that Liam was in an external meeting and wouldn't be back until the afternoon. "Is something wrong?" Mrs. Smith asked, immediately noticing Emily's agitation. "Emily made a formal complaint to HR," Emily said bluntly, quickly recounting what she had overheard. Mrs. Smith's face turned serious. "She's forcing our hand. Liam needs to know this immediately." "Where is he?" "Meeting with Japanese investors, but I can interrupt him if it's urgent." "It's urgent," Emily said. "Mrs. Smith, if she manages to prove that Liam paid for Miguel's hospital—" "She won't be able to prove anything officially," Mrs. Smith interrupted her. "Liam is very careful with this kind of thing, but the mere suspicion can cause serious problems." "What kind of problems?" Mrs. Smith hesitated. "The company's board of directors has been critical of some of Liam's recent decisions. They think he's been too emotional in his administrative choices. If they find out about you and Miguel—" "Could they fire him?" "They might try," Mrs. Smith said cautiously. "Liam has majority shares, so legally they can't remove you, but they can create enough political pressure to make your life very difficult." Emily sat heavily in the chair in front of Helena's desk. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't called in a panic that a day—" "No," Helena said firmly. "This is Amelia Johnson's fault, who is using you to get to Liam. And it's the fault of a system that punishes men for taking on family responsibilities when it doesn't align with corporate interests." "What do I do, Helena? If I leave the company now, I admit guilt. If I stay, I remain a target." "You accept Liam's proposal," Helena said simply. "What do you mean?" If you two make the relationship official, if Liam publicly acknowledges his fatherhood of Miguel, it stops being a scandal and becomes a legitimate personal matter. Helena leaned forward. Amelia is counting on the secret. Without the secret, she loses all her leverage. But what about the social scandal and the consequences for his career? Liam is a 42-year-old single, successful man. If he chooses to be in a relationship with a woman and acknowledges a child, it may generate comments, but it can't harm him professionally. Helena smiled. In fact, it might even help. Family men are seen as more stable by investors. And what about me? What happens to me in all this? You become Liam Parker's girlfriend, Helena said. And believe me, dear, there are much worse positions in life. Before Emily could respond, the phone on Helena's desk rang. It was Liam. Mrs. Johnson, I received your urgent message. What's going on? His voice came through clearly on the speakerphone. Helena looked at Emily, who nodded. Amelia Johnson filed a formal complaint with HR about irregularities involving Emily. She's implicating you indirectly. The silence on the other end lasted almost a full minute. Liam, Helena called. I'm here. I'm thinking. His voice was different, cold, calculated. It was the voice of a CEO making tough decisions every day. Helena, schedule an urgent meeting with Dr. Henry for today at 3 p.m. and prepare the transfer documents we discussed last week. What transfer? Emily asked. The official transfer of Emily to the administrative department, Liam explained over the phone, with retroactive effect to 2 weeks ago. Is that legal? Emily asked. It's ethical and justifiable, Liam replied. You have demonstrated exceptional competence, and as CEO, I have the authority to make internal transfers based on merit. Liam, Helena said carefully, are you sure you want to accelerate things like this? I am sure I won't let Amelia Johnson use Emily as a pawn to get to me. His voice became even more determined. And Helena? Yes. Also, schedule a meeting for tomorrow morning with our legal department. It's time to formalize some things that should have been formalized months ago. Emily felt her heart race. Liam, you don't have to do this for my sake. Emily, his voice softened as he addressed her directly. I'm not doing this for your sake. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, and because I've waited too long. But the week you asked for ended yesterday, Liam gently interrupted her. And unless you tell me, the answer is no. I will interpret your silence as a yes. Emily looked at Helena, who nodded encouragingly. Outside, New York City continued its frantic pace, millions of people making millions of decisions that would change their lives forever. And there, in that office on the 47th floor, Emily Johnson made the most important decision of her life. The answer is yes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Then get ready, Liam said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Because our lives just got a lot more interesting. The navy blue suit that Helena had chosen for Emily cost more than 3 months of her previous salary. Impeccable tailoring, Italian fabric, a cut that flattered her silhouette without being flashy, all designed to convey respectability and competence. At 24 years old, standing in front of the mirror in the women's executive bathroom on the 47th floor, Emily barely recognized her own image. You look beautiful, Helena said, adjusting the discreet pearl necklace that completed the look. Confident, professional, elegant. I feel like an imposter, Emily admitted, smoothing her skirt for the 10th time. What if they find out I know nothing about administrative work? You'll learn, Helena replied with conviction, but today isn't about your technical skills. Today is about establishing your position here officially. It was Thursday, April 25th, 9 a.m. In 30 minutes, Liam would make the announcement that would change everything. first to the HR department, then to the directors, and finally to the entire company. Emily would be introduced as the new administrative assistant, transferred internally due to her exceptional potential observed by leadership. Miguel was at home with Mrs. Johnson, who had been intrigued by the sudden change in Emily's routine but didn't ask questions. "That boy has a special luck," was all she had commented, rocking Miguel in her lap as he happily drooled on his new toy. "Emily," Helena called her attention, "there's something you need to know before the meeting starts." The older woman's tone made Emily stop looking at herself in the mirror. "What kind of something?" "Amelia has gained some allies. 3 cleaning staff members have signed statements claiming they noticed irregularities in your behavior and ours." Emily felt her stomach drop. "Which staff members?" "Marcia from the 25th floor, Sonia from the finance department, and Patricia, who works at reception on weekends." Emily knew all 3. Marcia was a bitter 50-year-old woman who constantly complained about work. Sonia had always shown envy towards other employees who managed better hours, and Patricia had tried several times to get a transfer to the weekday shift and had never been approved. "Did they lie in their statements?" Emily asked. "Not exactly," Helena said carefully. "They reported real observations." Emily took a deep breath, recalling her flexible hours, the time she left early, and the fact that she always had the best floors to clean. But they omitted the context and presented everything in a way that suggested improper favoritism. And did Dr. Henry believe them? Dr. Henry is an intelligent man. He knows there's more to this story than Emily is telling, but he's also a cautious executive who doesn't want to get involved in corporate scandals. Helena gently touched Emily's arm. "That's why Liam decided to be direct. Better to control the narrative than let others create it for us." They were interrupted by Liam's arrival on the floor. Emily heard him greeting the staff already at their posts, his voice firm and controlled as always. But when he appeared at the door of the executive restroom, she saw something different in his eyes, a mix of determination and anxiety. "How are you feeling?" he asked, stepping into the restroom and closing the door behind him. It was the first time they were alone since their conversation in his office. "Scared," Emily replied honestly. "What if this goes wrong? What if I can't do the job? What if people realize I don't belong in this world?" Liam stepped closer, stopping just near her but not touching her. "Can I tell you a secret?" Emily nodded. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "For 15 years, I've built a reputation for being cold, calculating, completely professional. In 2 hours, I'm going to publicly admit that I have a son with an employee and that I'm in love with her. That's going to change how everyone sees me. Do you regret it?" "The only thing I regret," Liam said softly, "is waiting so long." At that moment, Helena knocked on the door. "It's time." The HR meeting room was fuller than Emily expected. Dr. Henry Walker was sitting at the head of the oval table, his expression carefully neutral. Next to him were 3 directors, Emily recognized only by sight: Dr. Carlos Santos, the financial director, Dr. Marcia Oliveira, the operations director, and Dr. Paul Mendez, the compliance director. Amelia Johnson was present, sitting on the opposite side of the table, with an organized folder in front of her and an expression that barely concealed her anticipatory satisfaction. "Good morning, everyone," Liam said, entering the room with Emily by his side. "Thank you for attending this last-minute meeting." He pulled a chair for Emily before sitting down, a simple gesture that didn't go unnoticed by anyone in the room. "Before we begin," Dr. Henry said, "I must inform you that this meeting is being recorded for documentation purposes, as per company protocol." "Perfect," Liam nodded. "Total transparency is exactly what we want." Amelia leaned forward. "Mr. Liam, I didn't expect the employee to be present at this meeting, given the sensitive nature of the allegations." "Ms. Johnson," Liam interrupted her, his voice taking on the icy tone he used to end discussions. "Ms. Emily Johnson is present because this meeting directly concerns her, and because she is no longer a cleaning staff member." There was a moment of complete silence in the room. "What do you mean?" Dr. Henry asked. Liam opened the folder he had brought and distributed documents across the table. "Effective Monday of this week, Emily Johnson has been promoted to the position of Senior Administrative Assistant, directly assigned to my department. The transfer was personally approved by me, based on exceptional competencies observed during her time on the cleaning team." Amelia took the documents with slightly trembling hands. This is irregular. There's no evaluation protocol, no proper technical justification." "There is sufficient justification," Liam calmly retorted. "Over the past few months, I've observed Emily demonstrating analytical, organizational, and problem-solving capabilities that many of our administrative staff do not possess. Internal promotion based on observed merit is within my prerogatives as CEO." Dr. Paul Mendez, the compliance director, spoke up. "Mr. Liam, even though it is your prerogative, a promotion of such magnitude without a formal selection process could raise legal questions." "It could indeed," Liam agreed. "That's why I'd like to clarify something else." He stood up, walking to the window of the room before turning to face everyone present. "Emily Johnson is the mother of my son. Liam, who is 8 months old, is my biological child. I have taken full financial responsibility for him since birth, and now I am also taking on public responsibility. If the previous silence had been notable, this one was deafening. Emily could hear her own heart beating. "Furthermore," Liam continued, "Emily and I have a personal relationship that we intend to formalize soon. Any benefits she has received have been as the mother of my child and as the woman I have chosen to build a family with." Amelia visibly paled. This confirms everything I suspected. Favoritism, use of company resources for personal benefits." "None of that," Liam interrupted her categorically. "All financial support that Liam has received has come from my personal wealth. The company has never been harmed by a single cent, and Emily's promotion is based on real competence, which can be tested and proven." Dr. Henry finally spoke up. "Liam, I understand your personal position, but this creates complex precedents for our HR policy. It creates precedents that employees can be promoted based on merit, regardless of their initial position," Liam said firmly. "And that executives can take on family responsibilities without being penalized professionally." Dr. Marcia Oliveira, who had remained silent until then, spoke. "And what about the difference in socio-economic backgrounds? Can that not affect corporate dynamics?" Emily felt her face burn, but before she could respond, Liam did it for her. "The background difference is exactly what makes Emily valuable to this company," he said, his voice filled with pride. "She understands how every floor of this building works, knows every employee by name, and has the operational perspective that is often lacking in our administrative decisions." He returned to the table and stood behind Emily's chair, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. "Gentlemen, I could have continued hiding this situation indefinitely. I chose not to do so because I believe in transparency and because I refuse to treat the woman I love as an inconvenient secret." Amelia tried one last card. "And what about the other employees who reported irregularities? Were they wrong?" "They reported what they saw," Ethan admitted. "Flexible hours for a single mother, special consideration in times of need, and yes, support for medical care for a child. All of this happened, and I take full responsibility. The question is, does this make Emily less qualified to contribute to this company?" Dr. Henry looked at the documents scattered on the table, at Emily in her impeccable suit, and finally at Ethan. "I will need some time to review this situation with the executive board," he finally said. "Of course," Ethan nodded. "But in the meantime, Emily remains in her new position, and I continue to publicly acknowledge my family." When they left the room 20 minutes later, Emily felt as if she had weathered a storm, but for the first time in months, she was not facing it alone. "How do you feel?" Ethan asked as they reached the elevator. "Exposed," Emily admitted, "but also free." Ethan smiled. "That's exactly how you should feel. From today on, we have nothing left to hide." The elevator doors opened, revealing 3 administrative employees who immediately fell silent upon seeing them enter together. Emily could feel the curious stares, but for the first time she didn't care. She was tired of hiding, and maybe, just maybe, being by Ethan Parker's side was exactly where she had always meant to be. The news spread through the building like wildfire. In less than 4 hours after the HR meeting, every employee on the 50 floors of the corporate building on Fifth Avenue knew that Ethan Parker, the billionaire CEO, had publicly acknowledged having a child with a former cleaning staff member who now held an administrative position. Emily quickly discovered that being the center of attention in a corporate environment was very different from being invisible. Every trip to the restroom resulted in conversations that abruptly stopped when she entered. Every step through the hallways generated discreet whispers. Every glance carried a mix of curiosity, envy, admiration, or suspicion. "It's normal," Mrs. Smith reassured her during lunch when they were in the conference room on the 47th floor eating salads that cost more than a full meal at the deli Emily frequented. "Corporate news always generates gossip. In a week, something more interesting will happen, and everyone will forget." "I'm not sure I want them to forget," Emily admitted, absent-mindedly stirring the arugula on her plate. "At least while they're curious, they're being polite to me. And when the curiosity fades, then we'll find out who really accepts me here and who was just pretending." Ethan had spent the entire morning in meetings, first with the board of directors, then with the company's major shareholders. Mrs. Smith had casually mentioned that some of those discussions were intense, but she didn't provide details. It was mid-afternoon when Emily had her first real experience of the consequences of the announcement. She was organizing files at her new desk, an elegant workstation near Mrs. Smith's office, when Marcia Austin, one of the marketing directors, approached. "Emily, right?" Marcia was a 40-year-old woman, always impeccably dressed, with a smile that never seemed sincere. "Congratulations on the promotion." "Thank you," Emily replied, unsure how to interpret the woman's tone. "It must be comforting," Marcia continued, sitting on the edge of Emily's desk uninvited, "to know that your natural talents have finally been recognized." The comment was loaded with implications, but Emily maintained her composure. "I'm looking forward to contributing to the company in a new way." "I'm sure you are," Marcia smiled. "And it's admirable how some people know how to seize the opportunities life offers." Before Emily could respond, Ethan's firm voice echoed down the hall. "Marcia, do you have a minute? I'd like to speak with you in my office." It wasn't a request. Marcia quickly stood up, her fake smile faltering slightly. "Of course, Ethan, I was just congratulating Emily on her new position." "How kind of you," Ethan replied, but his eyes were cold. "Shall we?" 5 minutes later, through the glass door of Ethan's office, Emily could see a conversation that clearly wasn't going well for Marcia. The marketing director was gesturing nervously, while Ethan maintained a rigid posture, speaking with that expression she had learned to recognize, the expression he used when establishing non-negotiable boundaries. "He's protecting you," Mrs. Smith commented, approaching Emily's desk. "Marcia has always been ambitious and toxic. She probably thought she could intimidate you." I can defend myself, Emily said, but there was gratitude in her voice. You can, but you don't have to. It's part of the perks of being the boss's family. The word family still sounded strange in Emily's ears. Family. Was that what she and Ethan were building? A real family, or just a convenient arrangement disguised as a romance? Her thoughts were interrupted by the desk phone. It was Mrs. Johnson, calling from the apartment. "Emily, dear," the neighbor's voice sounded worried. "There are some men downstairs asking about you and Liam. They said they are journalists." Emily's blood ran cold. "Journalists?" "Yes, dear, they want to know about Liam's father, about when you two started dating, those things. I didn't say anything, of course, but they said they would be back." Emily looked around, searching for Mrs. Smith, but the secretary had left. Ethan was still in a meeting with Marcia. She suddenly felt alone and exposed, like a cornered animal. "Mrs. Johnson, can you take Liam to your sister's house this afternoon, just to make sure he's safe?" "Of course. My daughter. But is everything okay? Are you scared?" "I'm just being careful," Emily lied. "I'll call you later." She hung up the phone with trembling hands. Journalists. She hadn't thought about that the news could leak to the press. Liam was a significant public figure. A relationship with him would be news. "Are you okay?" The soft voice made her look up. It was Edward Sanders, the senior administrative assistant who had worked on the floor for 3 years. He had been one of the few employees to greet her normally throughout the day. "I just got a call. There are journalists in my building asking about me and Liam." Edward frowned. This escalated quickly. "Does Liam know?" "He's in a meeting." "I'll notify Helena," Edward said, already heading for the internal phone. 2 minutes later, Helena appeared, practically running down the hallway, closely followed by Liam, whose expression was darker than Emily had ever seen. "What journalists?" were his first words. "Did you talk to them?" "No, I wasn't even home," Mrs. Johnson answered. "She said she didn't say anything, but they said they would be back." Liam ran his hand through his hair, thinking quickly. "Helena, call Robert in security. I want a discreet team at Emily's building within an hour, and call Dr. Miranda, our media lawyer." "Liam," Emily said, "I don't want to cause more problems." "You're not causing problems," he interrupted her firmly. "I knew this could happen. I should have prepared better." "What does this mean for us? For Liam?" Liam sat in the chair next to her desk, pulling her closer. "It means we need to be more careful. It means you and Liam might need to stay in a safer place for a few days. And it means we need to accelerate some plans." "What plans?" "Emily," Liam said, taking her hands in his, "would you trust me if I asked you and Liam to come stay at my place for a while?" "At your place?" Emily felt her heart race. "I have an apartment on the Upper East Side with 24-hour security. Liam would be safe, you would be safe, and we could better control how we deal with the press." "Liam, won't it look like you're hiding me there as a kept woman?" "It will look like I'm protecting my family," Liam corrected firmly. "And that's exactly what I'm doing." Helena approached, hanging up the phone. "Robert is on his way to Emily's building, and Dr. Miranda can meet us here in an hour to discuss communication strategy." "Communication strategy," Emily repeated. "We need to control the narrative," Liam explained. "If we let the journalists create the story on their own, they'll make up anything that sells magazines. It's better to give our own version of the facts." "And what would our version be?" Liam smiled for the first time that day, a genuine smile that lit up his eyes. "The truth, that we met, fell in love, have a beautiful child, and now we're building a life together, a simple, true story that's hard to twist." "And what if people don't believe it? What if they think I got pregnant on purpose to pull a gold digger scam?" "Then they'll get to know you better over time," Liam said. "Emily, I can't control what people think, But I can control how I protect you and Liam, and I can ensure that you never feel alone in this battle." Emily looked into his eyes, eyes that were just like the sun they had created, and saw a determination that both reassured and frightened her. "If I agree to stay at your place," she said slowly, "there's no turning back, right? From then on, we're officially a couple." "From then on," Liam agreed, "we're officially a family." Outside, New York City continued its frenetic pace, indifferent to the drama unfolding on the 25th floor of the building on Fifth Avenue. But for Emily, the entire world boiled down to that decision: to trust the man who had completely changed her life, or to try to protect herself and her son from the consequences of a love that seemed too big to be real. "Okay," she finally said. "I trust you." Liam brought her hands to his lips, kissing them gently. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret it." But even as he said that, they both knew they were embarking on uncharted waters where not all storms could be predicted or controlled. Liam's apartment on the Upper East Side was a parallel universe to what Emily knew. 300 square meters of understated elegance, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city, Italian designer furniture, and a gourmet kitchen that looked like it came out of an architecture magazine. But what impressed Emily the most was not the luxury. It was how the space seemed empty of real life. "I don't usually stay home much," Liam explained, carrying Emily's small suitcase through the marble entrance hall. Liam was in Emily's lap, looking around with his curious 8-month-old eyes. The baby seemed fascinated by the reflections the late afternoon light created on the polished floors, babbling incomprehensible but clearly excited sounds. It was Friday, April 26th, and they had decided it would be safer for Emily and Liam to move to Liam's apartment until the situation with the press calmed down. The security team had reported that 3 vehicles from different media outlets were circling the building where Emily lived, and 2 journalists had tried to bribe the doorman for information. "The guest room is ready for you," Liam said, guiding her down a hallway decorated with contemporary American art. "And I turned the secondary office into a room for Liam. I had a new crib installed and all the equipment a baby needs." Emily stopped at the door as Emily entered what would be Liam's room and felt tears burning her eyes. The space had been completely transformed. The walls, once certainly painted in a neutral and corporate color, now boasted a soft blue, adorned with hand-painted white clouds. A light wood crib occupied the center of the room, surrounded by educational toys, a comfortable nursing chair, and even a humidifier. "When did you do all this?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "Last night," Ethan admitted, looking slightly embarrassed. "I called a decorator and asked her to work through the night. I wanted Liam to feel at home." Liam chose that moment to stretch his little arms towards his father, babbling, "Da, da, da," sounds he had recently started making that always made Ethan's heart race. "Can I?" Ethan asked, and Emily nodded, handing Liam over to him. Seeing the 2 of them together still caused a profound emotional impact on Emily. Liam naturally snuggled against Ethan's chest, as if he instinctively recognized the blood bond between them, and Ethan held his son with a tenderness that contrasted with his physical stature, as if Liam were made of the most precious crystal. "He's getting bigger," Ethan commented, sitting in the nursing chair with Liam on his lap, "and smarter. Look how he observes everything around." "He's in the phase of exploring the world," Emily said, sitting on the edge of the crib. "He tries to crawl, wants to grab everything he sees, and is starting to be wary of unfamiliar people. But he doesn't shy away from me," Ethan noted with satisfaction as Liam grabbed his tie and began to examine it with scientific interest. "He never shied away from you," Emily admitted. "Since that first day at the hospital, it's as if he knows that I'm his father." Ethan finished softly. Because he does. Children have an intuition that we adults lose. They remained silent for a few minutes, watching Liam explore his new surroundings. The baby was clearly fascinated by the environment, crawling on the plush carpet, trying to reach the toys in the crib, happily drooling as he discovered different textures. "Ethan," Emily finally said, "I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer." "Of course." "Are you doing all this for Liam or for me?" Ethan stopped playing with his son and looked directly at her. "Can I give a complex answer?" "I prefer the complex to a simple lie." "I started doing it for Liam," he admitted. "When I found out he existed, my first instinct was paternal responsibility. I wanted to ensure my son had everything I could provide, and now I do it for all three of us," Ethan said, "because I've realized I can't separate you from Liam in my mind. You are a complete package, and because—" He hesitated. "Because what?" "Because for the first time in my life, when I come home, I don't feel alone." The sincerity in his voice hit Emily like a punch to the chest. She looked around the elegant and empty apartment, imagining Ethan coming home every night to that luxurious silence. "Have you always lived alone?" she asked. "Always," Ethan confirmed. "I never dated seriously. Enough to live with someone. I never found anyone who made sense in my daily life." "And do I make sense?" Ethan looked at her with an intensity that made Emily feel exposed. "You make everything make sense." Before Emily could respond, Liam began to cry, that specific cry that meant hunger. Automatically, she got up. "I need to prepare his bottle." "The kitchen is fully equipped," Ethan said, also getting up with Liam in his arms. "I had everything stocked that Dr. James said babies his age need." The kitchen was indeed a dream. Side-by-side refrigerator, professional stove, granite countertops, and all the appliances Emily had only seen on TV shows. But what surprised her was finding, on one of the shelves, exactly the brand of formula Liam drank, organized alongside baby food, vitamins, and even the specific wipes she used. "How did you know about all these brands?" she asked, preparing the bottle while Ethan gently rocked Liam to calm him. "I asked Dr. James, the pediatrician, and also—" Ethan seemed slightly embarrassed. "I kind of observed what you bought when you went to the supermarket." "You followed me grocery shopping?" Emily turned incredulous. "I didn't follow." Ethan defended himself. "I kind of casually showed up in the same places you frequented to make sure you were okay." "Ethan Parker," Emily said, trying to sound stern but unable to hide her smile. "You stalked me." "I prefer the term discreetly protected," he retorted, also smiling. Emily tested the temperature of the bottle and offered it to Liam, who immediately stopped crying and began to nurse with that total concentration that babies show when they are truly hungry. "Can I feed him?" Ethan asked hesitantly. "Of course," Emily said, handing the bottle to him. "Support his head like this, and let him control the pace." Watching Ethan feed Liam was another one of those moments that redefined Emily's reality. The billionaire CEO, who commanded thousands of employees and made decisions that affected the country's economy, completely focused on the simple task of feeding his son. "It's harder than it looks," Ethan commented, as a bit of milk dribbled down Liam's chin. "You're doing great," Emily reassured him. "He's comfortable with you." "And you?" Ethan asked, looking at her over Liam's head. "Are you comfortable with me?" Emily considered the question honestly. Was she comfortable? Physically and emotionally, yes. Ethan was kind, respectful, clearly dedicated to both her and Liam. But there was a part of her that was still on guard, waiting for the catch, for the moment he would realize he had made a gigantic mistake. "I'm learning to be," she finally replied. "That's all I can ask for," Ethan said. "Time and patience." At that moment, the apartment intercom buzzed. Ethan frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone, and the doorman had orders not to let anyone up without prior authorization. "It must be Helena," he said, handing Liam back to Emily. "She said she might stop by tonight to give us an update on the press situation." But when Ethan opened the door, it wasn't Helena standing there. It was an elegant woman of about 65, with impeccably styled silver hair, wearing a beige linen suit that cost more than Emily's car. Her jewelry was understated yet clearly expensive, and she carried an Italian leather handbag that Emily recognized from store windows on Fifth Avenue. "Mother," Ethan said, surprise and slight tension in his voice. "I wasn't expecting you." "Evidently," the woman replied, entering the apartment uninvited. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on Emily, who was still holding Liam in her arms. "So," said Mrs. Isabel Parker, matriarch of the family and one of the most influential women in high society, "this must be the famous Emily." And at that moment, Emily knew her new life had just gotten much more complicated. Mrs. Isabel Parker had the kind of presence that filled a room. At 65, she was a woman raised in high society, educated in the best international schools, and shaped by decades of charity events, diplomatic dinners, and board meetings of large corporations. Her posture was impeccable, her gestures calculated, and her gaze, the same deep brown that Ethan had inherited, missed no detail. "Mother," Ethan interjected, clearly trying to regain control of the situation, "you could have called before coming." "I could have," Isabel agreed, delicately removing her leather gloves and placing them on a side table, "but I preferred spontaneity. I wanted to meet my daughter-in-law and my grandson without any preparation or pretense." Emily felt her blood run cold. Daughter-in-law. The word carried expectations and implications she wasn't ready to face. "Mrs. Parker," Emily began, trying to find the right tone, "it's a pleasure to meet you." "The pleasure is mine." "Dear," Isabel replied, approaching with a smile that seemed genuine but carried layers of scrutiny. "And this must be Liam." Liam, who was drowsy after his bottle, opened his little eyes upon hearing the new voice. For a moment, he looked at the elegant woman with childlike curiosity, then surprised everyone by reaching his arms out toward her. "May I?" Isabel asked, and there was a softness in her voice that hadn't been there moments before. Emily hesitated for just a second before handing Liam over to his grandmother. Isabel received the baby with the ease of someone who had raised children, cradling him correctly and rocking him gently. "He has the eyes of the Parker family," she observed, studying Liam's little face, "and the nose of his mother. He will be a very handsome boy." "Mother," Ethan interjected, "maybe we should sit down and talk like civilized people." "Excellent idea," Isabel agreed, heading to the living room as if she owned the place. "Emily, dear, would you like some tea? Coffee? Ethan keeps his kitchen well stocked." "Tea would be great, thank you," Emily replied, following them into the spacious room decorated in shades of grey and white. Isabel settled onto the main sofa, still holding Liam, who seemed completely at ease in his grandmother's arms. Ethan went to prepare the tea, clearly using the time in the kitchen to organize his thoughts. "So," Isabel said, turning her full attention to Emily, "tell me about yourself. Ethan only gave me the basic facts." "What would you like to know?" Emily asked, sitting in the armchair opposite the sofa. "Everything," Isabel replied simply. "Your family, your education, your dreams, your fears. If you are going to be part of this family, I want to truly know you." Emily took a deep breath. "I was born in Ohio, in a small town called Springfield. My mother passed away when I was 16, breast cancer that wasn't diagnosed in time because we couldn't afford regular checkups. My father, he couldn't cope with the loss and started drinking. I came to New York City at 18, looking for a better life." "And did you find it?" Isabel asked, with no apparent judgment in her voice. I found work, independence, and learned to fend for myself, Emily replied. It wasn't the life I dreamed of as a child, but it was the life I built with my own hands. And Ethan, how did you two really meet? Emily glanced toward the kitchen, where she could hear Ethan tinkering with cups and plates. At a summer festival in Brooklyn. He introduced himself as Ethan Parker, said he worked in maintenance. I believed him. And you fell in love with a man you thought was a mechanic, Isabel asked, and there was something like approval in her voice. I fell in love with a man who made me laugh, who danced with me even though he was terrible at it, and who looked at me as if I were the most interesting person in the world. Emily felt tears burning her eyes. I didn't care what he did for a living. And now? Does it matter now? Emily considered the question honestly. Now it scares me a little. Not because of the social difference, but because of the responsibility. Liam will grow up in this world with these expectations. I want to make sure I can prepare him properly. Isabel smiled, the first completely genuine smile since she arrived. That is the right answer. Ethan returned from the kitchen carrying a tray with tea and cookies. Are you two getting along? We are getting to know each other, Isabel corrected, which is more important than just getting along. She accepted the cup of tea Ethan offered and took a sip before continuing. Emily, may I be direct with you? I prefer honesty, Emily replied. I investigated you. The declaration hung in the air like a bomb. Ethan nearly dropped his own cup. Mother, he protested. Ethan, you are my only son and heir to a fortune built over generations. Of course I was going to investigate the woman he chose. Isabel turned. Hope you don't take offense, Mrs. Parker said to Emily. That depends on what you found out, Emily replied, trying to keep her voice calm. I found out that you've never had a negative bank balance, even while earning little. I found out that you sent money to your father every month, even when it meant you would eat only rice and beans for weeks. I found out that you never missed a day of work, even while pregnant and feeling unwell. Mrs. Parker paused. I discovered that you have character. Emily felt an immense relief, but also a growing irritation. And what if I didn't? What if you found something you disapproved of? Then we would have a very different conversation, Mrs. Parker admitted without hesitation. But that's not the case. Mom, Ethan interjected again, you can't just show up here and interrogate Emily as if she were a job candidate. I can, Mrs. Parker retorted, and she's doing quite well, I might add. Liam, who had been quietly sitting in his grandmother's lap, began to fidget. Emily stood up automatically. He needs a diaper change. I can do that, Ethan offered. We'll do it together, Emily corrected. He's still getting used to you. In the basic routines. As they changed Liam in the room Ethan had prepared for him, Emily was able to process the conversation with Mrs. Parker. Your mum is intense, she commented, carefully cleaning Liam. She's protective, Ethan corrected, and used to controlling situations, but she approved of you. How do you know? Because if she hadn't approved, you wouldn't have had tea together. She would have been polite but cold and would have left in 15 minutes. Ethan picked up Liam after Emily finished changing him. The fact that she's still here means she considers you worthy of the family. And does that matter to you, her approval? Ethan considered the question carefully. It matters because I love my mom and respect her opinion. But it wouldn't be decisive. If she didn't approve of you, I would try to change her mind. And if I couldn't, I would choose you anyway. Even risking your relationship with her. Emily. Ethan stopped walking and looked at her. I've already lost 8 months of my son's life because of the fear of other people's opinions. I won't waste any more time. When they returned to the living room, Mrs. Parker was still there, but had changed her position. She was standing by the window, looking out at the city view. "New York City has changed so much," she commented without turning around. "When I was young, this area was practically wilderness. Now look at it, a concrete jungle stretching to the horizon." "Change can be good," Emily said, joining her at the window with Liam in her arms. "It can indeed," Mrs. Parker agreed, finally turning to face her. "Emily, may I make a request?" "Of course." "Don't try to be someone you're not to fit into our world. You caught my son's attention precisely because you are authentic. Keep that authenticity." "And what if it's not enough? What if I can't meet the expectations?" Mrs. Parker smiled, the smile of a woman who had faced her own social challenges decades before. "Dear, I came from a middle-class family that made a fortune in coffee. When I married Liam's father, the matriarchs of high society treated me exactly as you are imagining they will treat you." "And how did you deal with that?" "I learned the rules, but I never let them change me on the inside, and over time, they adapted to me, not the other way around." Mrs. Parker gently touched Liam's face. "This boy is going to grow up with two strong women as his grandmothers. That's a blessing." Ethan stepped closer, wrapping an arm around Emily's waist. "Mom, are you staying for dinner?" "Not today," Mrs. Parker said, picking up her bag. "You both need time to adjust to this new life." "But Emily—" "Yes, ma'am?" "Sunday at 3 in the afternoon, lunch at my house. Uncle Edward and Aunt Carol will want to meet you and Liam. Nothing formal, just family." It was clearly a command disguised as an invitation. Emily looked at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "It would be a pleasure," Emily replied. Mrs. Parker kissed Liam on the forehead, then surprised Emily by kissing her on the cheeks as well, a gesture of acceptance that meant more than any words. "Ethan," she said to her son before leaving, "you chose well." After Mrs. Parker left, the apartment fell into silence. Liam had fallen asleep in Emily's arms, and she and Ethan simply looked at each other for a long moment. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I just passed a very important test that I didn't even know I was taking," Emily admitted. "Welcome to the Parker family," Ethan said, gently kissing her forehead, "where the tests never really end, but love always makes up for the difficulty." Looking out the window at the illuminated city below, Emily felt that her life had changed once again. But this time, she wasn't alone navigating through unknown waters. She had Ethan, she had Liam, and now, apparently, she had an entire family to call her own. The question that remained was, would she be strong enough to honor this blessing?